Welcome to Unbiased and On the Fence. I am joined with my guest today, Lori Lothian. How are you doing, Lori?
I'm great. Unmuted.
Perfect. Yeah, so wonderful to have you on the show. I love your channel. I love how you talk about all these miraculous and mysterious things that, other people might be a little bit nervous to talk about. But, one of the ways I found your channel was when I first started looking around with the Mande1a Effect and saw that you've been experienced. You're one of these people that it wasn't a new thing. It was just sort of new that everyone else was noticing it. Is that correct?
Oh, yeah, that's so correct. And I'm so glad everybody's got on with the program. I'm not alone. I'm not alone.
Man, it took me a while to get over that hump of disbelief because, it's just so hard to believe seemingly impossible things are happening. So
Yes.
is this something that's been going on your entire life?
Yeah. Well, so I want to preface a couple things then, because I'm not really about the Mande1a Effect, as you know, probably.
Mm-hmm.
I'm about enlightenment. And so coming out of the closet for me with my followers and my fans and my students, I guess you call it that, and going into this really strange area, talking about Mande1a Effect and spontaneous healings and other really cool things that are happening, reality shifts and stuff, really was kind of a scary place to go at first, because I did lose a lot of my people unsubscribed off my mail list, for instance. So I want to say that I have stepped into this territory on my YouTube channel, which I now have a little band that says all things strange and magical, so that I have a good reason to talk about it. I can just fold it into enlightenment and awakening. But the other thing is that I'm also like you. I'm biased on the fence. Is like I've always had a strong paranormal and metaphysical background. I've always experienced things since I was a child, ghosts in the house and all of that. Grew up in probably a ley line or something. But I've also always had a strong, linear, logical left brain. I'm ironically whole-brained, actually, in tests. And so I always want to watch something for a long time and observe it and come to conclusions carefully rather than jump. So I've been watching Mande1a Effect videos for a while. And how I found Josee was Sweetie Pie over at Affected Collective, Aaron.
Oh, I love Aaron. Yeah.
She featured you one time because she was talking about people who would like finally see the light. And she actually had a clip of you on your show when you finally came to the conclusion that you could not dismiss the Mande1a Effect, that when you began to unpack it and really look at it logically, there was no explanation other than what was happening was what was happening.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's how I found you before you found me, funny enough. So first of all, just all said and done, what I was calling reality shifting, I think, is part of what the Mande1a Effect is, but it's when it seems to be happening at a very personal level. And I want to tell a story that really exemplifies what I mean and when I experienced it first, that I think a lot of people here can relate to, because maybe even if you're not the logo noticer, that corporate logos are changing around you, etc., that you can also relate to things in your life changing this way, which is like a personalized ME, personalized Mande1a Effect. So I was in Peru in 2011, and Machu Picchu. And 2011 was the year of my spiritual awakening. And I don't mean like, people go, are you woke? And they mean kind of like, are you seeing like the secret, underground bases, the government, or the Mande1a Effect? I mean woke, like I woke up to this essence of Lori that is so much bigger and vaster than this mind-body complex. And if I could have joined an ashram in 2011. I was so blissed out for about 8 months or a year on enlightenment, but I didn't. Instead, I stayed home and wrote a blog called The Awakened Dreamer, Dispatches from Beyond the Dream, which meaning like I've woken up to the bigger aspect of myself. You are also capable of that. Let me report on what happens over here. So, but in 2011, I was in Peru, and same year of the awakening, but it was summer and the awakening was in the fall. And I was traveling with a woman, and she's an editor in Manhattan. And I want to tell her story because it's my favorite. Because what I'm about to tell you happened to her. These kinds of things began to happen to me. And this all began for me in 2011, summer through bleeding through into 2012. And then it's become a staple in my life, the shifting reality, okay, which is like a personal Mande1a effect. So this girlfriend's story is just the truth, but she's a well-known editor she's behind many famous book authors in the US. So I'm not allowed to say her name. I haven't had permission for giving you her name. Well, I'll give her a first name, but Stephanie. So Stephanie. So Stephanie was on the trip to Machu Picchu with me, one of about 8 or 9 of us on this big journey together. And when she got back home to Manhattan, where she lives, after the trip, some really weird shit was happening in her world that she couldn't explain for the life of her. And I'm only saying she's a famous editor type person, like, you know, because she's an established functioning human being, not having a mental psychotic episode. And so for a lot of your followers, they get that already. But for anyone else who watches this show, I want to say this is a real solid human being. So she got back from Machu Picchu. Now, to give you a why this might have happened to her, what I'm going to call a reality shift seems to happen to people when they take trips away from home that are really profoundly impacting. Like they've had a mystical experience, which she did on Machu Picchu. Or they have an injury, an acute injury, like a head injury or any kind of injury, head injuries especially. This is going to sound really weird. It's often that involve blood or a shock to their system. And then these are impulses, almost like when you want to have a quantum leap and an electron has to change its valence in an orbit around a nucleus. The same thing. Similarly, it's almost like a shock to the body, a shock to the emotional system, or a massive mystical experience. Usually when people travel, these are the variables I've watched that cause people to have a reality shift. Now, let me tell you what happened to her. She got back from her trip and she got to her Manhattan apartment. And she lives in a walk-up, a 4th floor walk-up in the Upper East Side of Manhattan. And she's had it for years, rent controlled. And she knows, like 20 years she's lived here. She knows her building. She knows her life. And the cab pulls up to her building. And there's this tree growing in front of her building, like to the side of her door. I mean, it's not a shrub. It's a tree. And she's like, oh my God, how did that get there? Like, she's thinking, can they plant these trees that big? I mean, is that possible? She was gone for 2 weeks. Now there's a tree. And she's like, okay, well, she'll ask the neighbors what happened. And she goes into her walk up, and she gets to her floor. And her neighbor down the hall is coming out the door with a dog. And on a leash. It's a big, big dog. It's not a puppy. And she says, oh my God, you adopted a dog when I was in Peru. And her neighbor's like, no, this is my dog, the dog I've had for years. And my friend Stephanie is now thinking she's having a psychotic episode. And then the next day, I know it's crazy. The next day, she has a bowl of keys, and that's where she keeps, when she's traveling, she doesn't take anything but the house key, obviously. So she's got all of her other sets of keys in there. And the next day, she goes to her key ring to put her single key back on the main key ring with all the post office and all the other keys. And there's a key on the key ring that she doesn't recognize. Now that's just so good because she's like, what the hell is this key? It was only 2 or 3 weeks later when her sister came to visit her that she said to her sister, I've got a strange key in my key ring. You know what this is? And her sister's like, yeah, the key to Dad's cottage in the Catskills. And she going, yeah, but we sold that years ago. Can we give you the Twilight Zone, please? So this happened to her. And I went to visit her in the spring, let's say 8 months after Peru in Manhattan. And she was telling me these stories, at which point I'm like, oh my God, because I had similar kinds of stories. And one of them is I came back from a trip to Scotland, an example, and I have a favorite radio station I listen to all the time. It's called Espace Musique. The musical space and French Canadian radio in Canada with CBC. And I like to listen to it because I love the French language. I'm in Montreal now. This is not my home. This is an Airbnb while I'm visiting my daughter here. And basically it was really cool because I got back from this trip to Scotland and I had a lot of really profound mystical experiences, like the Eye of the Sky and the fairy pools, and lots of really cool shit happened. And I got back to my Vancouver home and I turned my car radio on my first day back. And I know where to find my favorite radio station, right? And it's funny because I'm one of those people that never does that, program your radio stations into your freaking, I should, but I just don't. I just like move the button until it gets to the right spot on the dial. So I'm pressing my radio to get to the dial place where my FM station is supposed to be for the music, and it's not there. There's nothing but static. And I'm like freaked out. And so then I phoned my best friend guy, dude friend, who was like the guy who got me into this radio station right away. Sean, I'm in my car and I can't find our radio station. Am I having a stroke? What's going on? And he says it's where it's always been, and it's at, right, 88.1, but not in my reality before. And so it's, and somebody on my YouTube channel, when I told that story, what they said was, well, maybe the radio station, call station, changed its location on the FM dial. And I tried to explain, no, for everybody else that around me who listened to the station, it was always at this new location.
That is so wild. So, gosh, so man, that is amazing. So when you heard your friend telling you about this, had you experienced anything yet, or were you sort of thinking like, is she off the wall here, or what's going on?
It really hadn't started to happen to me in a big way. What happened when she told me her story was I began to go back in my memory to connect some dots for things that didn't fit and for which I had no explanation. So, and I can't remember which dots they were, because I remember we were at a martini bar, Upper East Side, and we were laughing so hard at the story because we were going to create a screenplay called Stephanie's World based on her story. But I said to her then, oh my God, this sounds like what was happening to me when, and I didn't go back far. In other words, this phenomena that I was calling reality shifting, it seemed, and another woman is famous for having called it that. Can't remember her name. I would say I experienced it predominantly beginning in 2011, but I didn't know what was happening yet. I don't think it ever happened to me in my life before that. But I want to tell you one more story and then about this phenomena. I mean, I had a lawyer friend in Vancouver, and I told her about this phenomena, and she was interested but not necessarily sure she'd experienced it. And she went away to a travel like for 5 months, 4 months on a big kind of pilgrimage around the world. And she came back to her home, and she was blown away because not only did things in her office seem completely different, like personalities had changed of people she knew, but there was a building that was a few doors down from her house. It was completely gone. I mean, it was just gone. I mean, it was not there. It was a lot or something. So she asked people, was there a demolition when I was gone? I mean, where's this building? Yeah. And people are like, well, there's not been a building there for a couple of years, right? And she's like, no, it was there just before I went on my trip. So these kinds of really profound changes in reality, I think they're happening to a lot of people, and they're discounting them. My memory must be at a fault. Maybe I imagined there was a building, or my neighbor had a dog, or that I've got menopause brain and my radio station memories are going down the tubes, But anyway, so that phenomena is extensive in my reality. And I now want to say to anyone who's experienced that kind of a shift, that if it's happening in your life, it's happening because I believe, I intuitively sense, it's like we're navigating reality in a multiverse, and we are literally able to bump ourselves into a time stream in which some variables have changed. But the question I always ask myself is, are we always bumping upward? Like, are we bumping into, like, energetically, Shane, better timelines? Is that what awakening really is? Is that what the rapture really is for the Christians?
Yeah, that's interesting you said that, because I've wondered why. I've had this hard drive problem that I'm still dealing with, right? And I'm sitting here thinking, what if in the higher timeline, the hard drive quits working, but I'll get upset about it messing up, and it pulls me back into the lower one, and it starts working again, because I've been going through this like 4 or 5 times now where it just completely quits working. I run tests. It's like, this hard drive is shot, and then I decide to try it a few days later, and it starts working again mysteriously. And as you see, it's working right now. And, I'm going back and forth with this, and then you've got me thinking, I wonder. So do you think when we get out of our normal grind, our normal everyday thing, because it sounds like you were saying trauma, there's catalysts sort of that can push you into these other timelines. Is that sort of how you view it happening?
Absolutely, there are catalysts. And some of the biggest catalysts for me have been when I've injured myself. So I don't suggest people use injury as a catalyst, but I tried to, I mean, like I had a head injury one time and I have a scar from that. I should have had stitches here. And then like everything changed, like so much changed from that. I had a mild concussion too, but the head injury changed a lot. One of the other ways it works is people change around you. So personality traits and or physical appearance differences. And, my ex-husband and I both experienced a seemingly simultaneous reality shift one time. And we had a mutual friend who had this, she always has long hair, but her hair is baby. In our memory of her and the other timeline, her hair would have been down to her back, like her butt. And she has that hair, now. But within like 1 month of seeing her over 2 separate occasions, we both experienced, she came to dinner at our house. We both experienced her suddenly having hair that was only up to here. And we actually said to her, both of us, you look different to us. Your hair is much shorter. Did you get it cut since we saw you last month? She's like, no, but we both remembered like a month before a dinner at her house, like a close friend. She's known for her hair being long in our memories. So you can have collective shifts like that, where it's not just you going crazy.
Right. So you and okay. So it could be
But
that she shifted, right? And then, but you guys stayed in the same place and the short-haired version came, or you guys
well,
both shifted together.
I don't know how it really, the mechanism is, of course, well beyond my ability to figure out. I just think there's a thought here. Hang on. I'm not sure if like in a case like that, a new version of her walked into our world, because I don't know that we bodily transport places. I think our consciousness, I think my way of best understanding this is that it's a little bit like a video game, if you believe the simulation theory, in which the attention or the focal point of the main character, you, like in the game, the avatar, creates a reality. The algorithm for the simulation will create the reality right as the game is being played. So ostensibly, things behind the character don't exist at all, right? The avatar, the character that you're playing. The algorithm for the simulation is creating the reality as you move through it in accordance with your attention. And so I think consciousness, our soul, for lack of a better word, I like soul, but consciousness, our soul, is creating reality at some level by virtue of its attention. And if its attention can potentially move, if we could imagine a verticality of reality, if all of reality is happening in the eternal now, then maybe reality is like a skyscraper to infinity and below. And perhaps our consciousness can navigate different floors in reality. And that when we have a reality shift, we go to a time stream, horizontal, a different floor, where it's potentially better for us. And what does better mean? I think it means we're awakening to who we really are, and that we're here called to actually, be corrective, to do repair, like the Jewish would call it tikkun, Tikkun, to do repair on this world that we have so badly shattered. And so I feel like we're collectively doing this reality shifting, and our consciousness is changing time streams. So the question I have is, what happened to the Lori in the old time stream where the radio station was at a different call place? Does she still exist at one level? I don't know. Or does she no longer, does she dissolve in a way? Because now my consciousness is entertaining itself here. I don't know.
So does that lead you to the sort of line of thinking that perhaps, I mean, we all exist, but we're sort of in our own consciousness simulation, to where like something completely different is happening within your consciousness stream right now? You might not even be here on the show having this conversation. You might just be sort of like when you have a dream at night and you have people in those dreams, but you wake up the next day and you're like, I had a dream about you last night, but they weren't there. But they were there for you, but they weren't really there for themselves. Do you
Yes.
think it could be? Because I've often thought, because sometimes it seems like the world, not to sound narcissistic, because I know it's hard to say this
It
without.
revolves around fate.
Yeah, it seems like the world revolves around me. Like there's these extras, and we're all the center of our own
Oh,
movie. The star of our own show, and it would be like that from everyone's point of view. I mean, like you're the star of your show, right? Like
Yeah.
maybe we're all sort of separate, or maybe it's sort of intricately intertwined together. I don't know. I'm on the fence about it because nobody really knows. You know what I mean?
Well, I just watched Jumanji, the movie, the new movie, the funny one. It's really good, right?
With The Rock? Yeah, I
Yeah,
saw it.
it
They
was
talk
just
about NPCs
hilarious.
and all that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Made me think of that topic. Um, that's a really good question. I do think the world does revolve around us individually, actually, at some level. Our own spark of the divinity, the one spark of the divine essence that each of us is creating a kind of one, like the game is yours, you're playing it, right? But I think that the connection between the other ongoing games, which is each person's storyline, is where the juice is. I actually feel like, you know, I I use synchronicity to navigate my life. Like I literally don't make a decision without a synchronistic clue. And it's essential that I have mind-bendingly clear signals for me to make choices about what I'm going to do. But it involves other people because they become bearers of synchronistic messages for me, right? So
Definitely.
it's my world. But they're participating in my story. And I don't think that I don't think they're algorithmic non-players like in Jumanji.
They
What is
seem
that?
like it sometimes when you go to tell them about the Mandela effect and they sit there and they say, oh, it's always been that way. But they
Oh, well,
remembered it the moment before. And it's like,
well, you could go there that all the Emmy affected and those who can actually see the Mandela effect are the real players. Everybody else is nothing but what do they call them in Jumanji when they're not
NPC, non-player characters.
non-player characters?
Or like Floor Broom calls them
Oh,
empty
yeah.
seaters.
But then what do you do when a non-player character is your parents or something? I mean, that's pretty like, oh, okay, you know what I mean? Oh, mom and dad, sorry, you're just a non-player character.
But I was one for, this dawned on me not too long ago. I was driving for Uber, like in between the year of, when I first heard about the Mandela effect, but before I really realized it was happening, I remember somebody getting in the car. I would usually drive right around the time bars were getting out because you'd make more money then or whatever. But
Oh, yeah.
one of the passengers was like, "Hey, have you ever heard of the Mandela effect?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, we're like Fruit Loops changed," and they're like, "Yeah, yeah," and they were really excited and real amped up about it.
Yeah.
But I thought back at that and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm one of those people that I talk about that like knew about it, but it like totally didn't phase them. But I didn't want to seem crazy as this driver to my passengers, like, really, I wasn't affected that much by it. But to them, I looked back and I was like, oh my gosh, I seem like one of those people that saw it happening, but was like, no big deal. You know what I mean?
Well, so this always intrigues me. Really, it really intrigues me that people can see it happening, but not think it's a big deal. Because you have three categories. You don't see it, like everything's always been that way, and they can't seem to find any identifying changes. Then you have the people who see it, but then they just blow it off. Like it's not a big deal to them, even though it's reality, mind-bending shit. Like
I didn't
excuse my
really
language.
believe it at the
Excuse my
time.
language. I'm very, very not PC or whatever, or I just
Okay.
swear a lot. And then you have the people who see it, and then it becomes a life changer. It becomes a rabbit hole, really. At first, it can be disturbing, and then it becomes intriguing. But there's this kind of weird progression, and I don't know that the people who don't actually never see it are going to see it. Like, I don't know that they're going to see it. One of the channels that I really like, who is it? One of these Mandela channel guys. I did this show, and he talked about um, people who are in a profession where they can't afford to see it don't see it. For an example, a surgeon. If suddenly the liver, no, the liver's bigger, the heart's in a different place, and the kidneys are suddenly under our ribs. Hello, I've had so many kidney infections before, and they're down below here in the old days, way down. And so suddenly you've got these body changes, and you're a surgeon. You can't go in there with your old memory. You have to suddenly only see things as they are now.
Yeah, that's one of the things, the micromanagement of how, and it's the same way with like a pilot or a ship captain. They don't see the geography changes. And that's sort of what led me to this belief that whoever's doing this is doing it on purpose and they're trying to do it in a way that's benign. It's not endangering anyone. That's what led me to this whole thing that it was a benevolent wake up call because of the care that seems to have been taken. Because if you think reality is changing right before our eyes, and think of all the bad things that could occur from that, yet it seems to be going pretty smoothly for some of these changes we see, right? I mean, your
Yeah.
heart moving and
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah. I don't totally get it. Like, yeah, it's almost like you don't have to worry about going to a surgeon and asking him about where he is in the Mandela effect, so he doesn't get confused about where he's slicing. But, totally. And which leads me to the body, because that's one of the things I'm really experiencing is body changes in my own self that are miracle healings. And I just was, as you saw on my YouTube channel, I just recently did a little thing about that. It's not just me. So I don't know what to call this phenomena, because it's not like the big one where everybody's organs have changed. It's more like in your own body right now, there's this capacity for complete spontaneous remissions of chronic disease and acute problems. And I'm not the only one, but I'll tell you what happened to me for anyone who doesn't know, and then I can share multiple stories of people. But it started for me this year, only in January. So it seems like something new. And just like the Mandela effect was, well, reality shifting was new in 2011 for me. This is new now. So I have scoliosis, which is a condition where the spine is curved laterally, sideways, and it's moderate to mild. And it developed in my teen years, and it's usually genetic. My mom had it too, so it came down my family line. And it's not caused me any pain or discomfort because it's not a severe case. But every body worker who works on me always talks about my scoliosis and gives me a huge list of things I'm supposed to do. They want me to do this, and I'm a yoga girl too, so I do yoga. But they want me to do all these stretches that's going to actually improve my spinal strength so that I don't end up like a tilted over woman in my old age. And so I never do them. I'm so freaking lazy to do assigned exercise. I exercise when I feel like it, and I don't feel like I've never done it. And then on top of that, this is the backstory. I also had a car accident in 2011. Yeah, the same year that reality shifting started for me. I was rear-ended by a taxi driver. I didn't put the dots together. That happened in the summer. Anyway, he smashed into my back of my car, and I was doing the parallel park. I was at a full stop, and I was doing the torque my body to go back into the space thing, and I was in that position ready to go. And when he hit me, so because of that, my foot on the brake and my body twisted. The major impact of the injury was not even to my neck, it was to my hip joint. And so this hip became damaged, and I had physio and all that stuff. But I had scar tissue, I guess, in the socket and in the joint and the soft tissue that never really properly healed. I couldn't walk for 6 months properly. I was really like, it was not a good scene. I'm an exercise person. I was limping and I was in bad shape. But it took about a year and a half to finally resolve at a level it was functional again. Meantime, the range of motion of my hip has been compromised from the injury, probably the scar tissue around the joint. And so things in yoga that I could never do, like pigeon, it's called sleeping pigeon, or some hip flexor stretches, I would have to get in yoga. They're blocks, and you get these little styrofoam block thingies, or these whatever blocks you can use to support you. And positions you don't have flexibility for. And I'm extremely flexible anyway, but this hip was fucked, excuse me, and I couldn't do a damn thing in yoga with that hip for a long time, forever. So what happened in January was, those are the two things that had overnight healing, my hip and my back, spine. What happened in January was I went to a meditation in a girlfriend's basement, and it was also the cusp of a super full new moon or something, an eclipse or something big. And she had a didgeridoo player and a drummer and a chimer and a bell person. It's a whole, everyone gets in it, lies down on your yoga mat, and you do a meditation, or you do in shamanic terms, it's a trance journey. And so basically, me and my girlfriend who went to this event, she's beside me, we lied down, and it was a 90-minute journey. And we were both thinking that's way too long. There's no way. But it was over so fast, it's like we had a time warp. And when it ended, we both looked at each other and said, that can't be 90 minutes. And it was. And something profound happened during my journey, in which let's just say what it is. I flew off out of my body. I went to another planet. And these alien energies that were really lovely, kind of blue and electrical blue light colors, said, we're going to heal your body. And I'm saying, okay, fine. I said, don't have a lot wrong with it, but if you want to heal it, go for it. And then I never thought about it, because I went home that night at 9:00 and I recorded my journey on my handy iPhone so I wouldn't forget what had happened. And then I went to sleep because I was really tired for some reason. And I woke up the next day. Now, just to give you the clue, I went to yoga, say 2 days before this trance journey. So if the trance journey was on a Monday, I was in yoga on a Saturday. And now my body was still dysfunctional. I still couldn't do the stretches that I needed the block for. And then the day after this journey, I went to yoga because I go like 3 times a week. And suddenly, I don't know what happened in the sense that I always had the block ready to do those stretches in yoga. So I knew I was going to need it. But for some reason, I guess I must have gone down into the stretch and realized that I was feeling really flexible. And so I just tossed the block and suddenly I'm in full on sleeping pigeon. This hip has got full range of motion. And then there was 3 or other hip position exercises we do that I could do fully with equal capacity of my undamaged hip. And the next day after that, I went to my shiatsu lady that I go to twice a month or something, once a month, whenever I feel it, but usually once a month minimum. And she hadn't seen me in a month. And she said, wow, your spine is straight. Your scoliosis is better. And she goes, you've been doing those exercises, haven't you?
You're like, no, but I took a journey.
I know. And then I saw her again 2 weeks later and she said it's the same thing to me. I was kind of suspicious, like maybe she was like misreading my back when she was working on me, right? So then I started to ask other people, is this happening to you? And I began putting queries out to my students and my Facebook tribe and stuff. And I'm getting a little collection of stories of these spontaneous healings that a lot of people are having. They have no explanation. Even sometimes they're not trying to heal something. It's not like they're like working on a problem. It's just suddenly a problem has gone away.
That is amazing.
So
I had the same thing happen to one of my viewers. He actually broke. He was riding on an ATV, and the peg hit the back of his leg when he put his foot down because he hadn't come to a full stop, and he broke his leg. And he got over to this river or pond or something, and he believed that it was going to be healed. And when he pulled it out, it was healed. And it was like,
oh my God,
it's like right then on the spot it healed. And this was like late last year.
Okay. See, there you go. And there's this famous teacher, Mande1a He's a Burkina Faso elder, in quotes, because he's probably 58, but they call them elders, from Africa. And I went to see him speak in January after my healing at a talk. And he explained to the crew he had a lifelong heart arrhythmia, like a severe one that could like disable him. It could have been a fibrillation even. And that he was in Africa visiting his tribe and his people in January. And one of the medicine women did a healing on him. And he's kind of like, knock on wood, I haven't had a problem with my heart in the last like 6 weeks. It seems to be healed.
That's amazing. Yeah, I had heart issues that were gone since I found out my heart moved. I'm like, hey, I just noticed that I'm not having because I would have heart palpitations all the time. And they just went away. I don't have the blood pressure issues. And
okay, so if you were
so it's happening.
Okay, so you're a Christian type. You're used to be a Christian or something.
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and me too, right? I got to confess, I was a Pentecostal born-again Christian for 3 years, 17 to 20. But that's irrelevant to anything because I had a mystical experience with Jesus, okay, at 16, before I even had any context. I joined the church after that, looking for some kind of structure, right? And my boyfriend was born-again Christian Pentecostals, and he pulled me into his church. But so I want to separate mystical encounter with the divine in the form of a Jesus energy and religion. They're so 2 different things. But in that time I was spending with the Pentecostals, I learned a lot about the ideas that they had about the end of the world and, revelations and the rapture and all of that. So I had 3 years of immersion in that tradition, which I think has a lot of value. I want to say that I do feel that the book of Revelation is a prophetic book, and I do think there's value. But what I'm saying with the experiences of the spontaneous healings that people are encountering, and the sort of sense of this idea of a possible new earth in which we live in harmony with all beings and all creatures, in which our bodies are whole, and that there's no such thing as illness, and this kind of utopian vision of where we go in the golden age, right? Described in the book of Revelation, I believe, but also in other traditions. What if it's not just like that? One day we're here and then we're there. But people like you and me and others who are listening to the show who are waking up to reality shifting, Mande1a Effect, and they're available to allow themselves to be purposed by the divine, are also having upgrades to their physical form.
That's amazing. I agree. Yeah. And it seems like it's like Jesus said, we would do the things he did and greater. And it's like, it's finally happening. You know what I mean?
Exactly. We're living in the era of miracles. I just want to walk on water. I had a dream a few years ago, like way back, like 15 years ago, I was walking on water. So I'm hoping that's the prophetic dream.
That would be cool. Yeah. My thing is just instant manifestation, like to manifest, a bowl of fruit or something like Jesus did with feeding all the, the people or whatever. They just kept pulling the food out of the basket. I think that would be really cool to be able to just, make non-GMO fruit baskets.
Oh my God, that's your specialty in the new world, right? It's like, oh, there's Sean with his of his non-GMO fruit baskets.
That would be awesome.
Oh my God, yeah, totally, totally. So this excites me as much as I'm disturbed by the U.S. politics right now, and try not to get too disturbed by, because my kids are born in the U.S. I lived in New York City, Washington D.C., Annapolis, Maryland. I spent 17 years in the United States, and I feel like very connected to that country because of that. So I really try not to get disheartened and really upset by the chaos and the stuff that seems to be happening in your political environment. And I try to understand that the mayhem and the miracles are both happening at the same time.
Yeah, it's two sides of a coin, isn't it?
It seems to be.
Yeah.
And it seems to be like the lighter gets lighter and the darker gets darker. But at some point, of course, that dynamic is going to snap, like literally can't, like the darker and the light polarity where things are getting more miraculous. At the same time, they seem to be getting more, the wound seems to fester even deeper in the, the human psyche, the control, the power, the greed, the darkness, basically, which is, part of being here. And, some people think that Earth is a school. I think it's a fallen realm, frankly. I think I would go with the Jewish mystical tradition that God was coming down through reality structures, and the vessels shattered. And the shattering of the vessels, the repair of the shattering, is the human return to the Garden of Eden, returning to the divinity that we are, the source. So if we shattered, then we're broken. And if we're broken, we're fallible and we're mistaken. We're not wrong and evil. we're broken. Just like you don't blame a broken laptop, right, for being broken. You just want to fix it.
Right.
So I think that's us. I think humanity has been shattered, and we have the job of restoration here with the help of God.
And I think we're moving into this realm where the repair is well underway, and people are waking up, the veil is thinning. We're getting a peek behind the curtain, so to speak, like in the Wizard of Oz, the man behind the curtain. We're starting to see just how dark the dark is and just how light the light is, because many of these things have been this way for a while. It's just we're realizing how bad the baddies are and how many good people are really around that just are good loving people that want a good world to unite in,
The vast majority of people are good, loving people. I think it's that there's more the weight that is carried by the darkness in some ways. Like it's like their density, the mass is so thick that it seems to topple reality in lack of proportion to their actual numbers. Like if you just were to travel across the U.S., which I have because I've lived there, and I use the U.S. as an example because if you don't live in the U.S. and you look at it and you're like Canadian looking at you guys, we worry for you, guns and murders and bad stuff going on. But if you're just like be traveling across the U.S. and talking to everyday normal people, like it's amazing, normal, beautiful, good souled people. So then you have people in power, right, who are like just not that thing, right? They're kind of the opposite, actually.
Yeah, and it's amazing. I often bring up natural disasters. You can really see the loving nature of humans when we saw Houston happen, and all these people are coming out with their boats, for free and helping people. And it's like they didn't care what race or religion you were. They were just coming out and helping other human beings, like brothers and sisters. And, it was so touching. I watched those things and I would cry at the pure love of humanity that you see demonstrated in these situations.
I so agree. I was just at a workshop and we had to ask the question, what touches your heart or what moves your heart? And my answer was just your answer. It was when I see acts of heroism that everyday normal mortal humans rise to, that have no connection to any kind of bias about whether you're my tribe or not. Like there's just this natural.
Or money wasn't an issue. How much are you going to pay me to go rescue people? It was like people were happy to do it, Because and then the religious leaders are like, I don't want them messing my church up. It's like, hello, this is like a revealing of the true nature of people here,
Yes, it is. Like, you're right. It's like the veil is being lifted from our eyes so we can see what's really true. You brought something beautiful to the public awareness, actually, which is the Sam material with Nathan Saunders. Like,
Yes, I noticed, because this isn't new to you. You've been doing stuff like this for a
but
while.
his Nathan Saunders doing for people who don't know what that is, find out on Shane's Mysticism, Mande1a Effect, Synchronicity shows that you've done, 7 of them, 6 of them, because bringing to awareness to people that the divine is as close as your own skin to you, and it's with you at all times. And whether you want to call it Sam, which could be Samuel or Samantha, that doesn't matter, because he's got this name, his own private connection to the divine. From his near-death experience, for those who don't know, Nathan has connected and personalized this essence of the divine called Sam, and has established this beautiful rapport in which he can communicate through many tangible world synchronicities, but particularly music, Pandora's music box or Spotify in Canada. Anyway, so I've got so many friends now who I sent to that material who are totally grooving on it and understanding that if you're confused about life and if you feel like alone, that you don't need to. And the myriad of songs from Pandora or Spotify or your iTunes shuffle, that the divine can break through to communicate directly to you in a way that will blow your mind and open your heart, is so incredible. So I'm so happy that you put Sam out there. Well,
Oh yeah,
Sam and Nathan, because the 2 of them are connected.
well, I was watching one of your videos a while back where you were talking about how you'll get synchronicities, and then you'll say, okay, like the 4th song on the radio is going to be a message for me, or something along those lines. And it's sort of that same, you're tapping into that same divine essence of getting a message and looking for it and expecting it and getting it.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
you can really kind of come up with your own thing. I mean, that's why I tell people that, if you don't really groove with the name Sam or Pandora, just pay attention and do it in whatever way you feel confident with. I mean, you just pay attention, because it's always around us all the time. If you're just paying attention, we're just usually looking at our phone or worried about something, we're not paying attention, but we're getting these messages screaming at us all the time.
Although I have to say that looking at my phone is sometimes a part of the synchronistic attention, right?
That's true. Yeah.
Have you not just looked at your phone and gotten that 1111, or that, for me, I get the 108, which is my number, and I'm like, I'm on track, right? Like it's 1 o'clock and 8 minutes, and I look at my phone, or 10 o'clock and 8 minutes. Like the 108 symbol is often given to me in life, in my visual field, or on my bill at the restaurant. It's my repeating number, right? It happens a lot, but thank God for my phone, because I go, I should check my messages. I push my button and I get the time, and the time tells me it's 108. Like, I'm on track.
Yeah, signpost. I like to think of it as a signpost. And I think it's individual. I mean, for me personally, I'll look and I'll see a time. Like the other day, I saw 5:22 as while I was about to leave this comment to someone, and it immediately brought up Matthew 5:22, where it talks about not being angry. And and it's like, that wouldn't have been anything to anyone else, but for me, it made that scripture pop into my mind that was saying, was talking about being angry, and it dealt with the specific thing going on with me at that specific moment. So it could be anything.
It can be. I love when people know the Bible well enough to have the numerological correspondence, because I don't have that. Because it's code. And your breakthrough that you talked about in your show, where you went into this like fugue state, I call it, when you were sick with the flu, where you were kind of between worlds. And then you got this download about the metaphoric nature of the divine connection to humanity. Like, we talk to God or our divine essence in symbolic and metaphoric language. And we get in danger zones when we begin to get literal. But you see, there's so many ways we're being talked to. We're being talked to through the symbols of numbers. We're being communicated with through the language of song, and then there's just real, like, how people are often messengers for you of synchronistic clues. Like, they'll say exactly something that they couldn't possibly have known was like the thing you're waiting to hear that day. I'm staying in this woman's house. I got to show you guys something. If I can move around and not lose the signal on here, I'm fine. So I've been having a confluence of angels and wings synchronicities, like crazy. And it's getting nuts, okay? But like literally, the symbol is angel wings or wings of angels. And I've checked in here now, 2 days I've been here. She puts me in this room, and I get in here, and then wait till you see these angel wings. Can you see them there?
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And then over here, she has a painting with an angel in it. This is the angel wings right here and here. Oh, that's visible on her wall. And then I go down for breakfast with her this morning because I'm in her house. I'm just a guest. And she starts telling me about this thing where she's just discovered her angel wings metaphorically in a meditation.
Oh,
I'm like, okay, girl, you have no idea, but you're just a part of you're one of those players of my story.
yeah.
You're part of my like confluence of the symbology of the wings of angels that has been massively downloading into my reality only for about 5 days now. It's really new.
Yeah, I've noticed that even walking by, it can be complete strangers, and you'll overhear like a few words of a sentence, and you're like, "Holy crap, that was for me!" They have no idea, you know what I mean? But if you're paying attention, it's there all the time. That's what's what I was talking about it seeming like the world revolving around you, because sometimes you get them so they're just so constant that you're like, everything is here for me, you know what I mean? And not, like I said, not in a narcissistic way, but maybe we're all in our own individual dream, because the more you look for it, the more you see it, and the more you're like, dude, this is like the Truman Show, you know?
Oh my God. Yeah, that's a good example. It is like so here's the thing. I would suggest you should try this. You should do the Pandora shuffle and ask Sam. For those who aren't Sam literate, Sam's just another word for your divine essence. Ask Sam to give you a song in the shuffle that explains why it seems like the world revolves around each of us.
That's
and the key word that you said, the key word is attention. It is the key to everything. And one of the reasons people aren't necessarily experiencing the magic that you're experiencing and I'm experiencing, the miracles, the synchronicities, the mind-bending stuff, is because they simply haven't been paying attention. And the more attention you pay, the more it happens. And the more it happens, the more attention you pay. And it's a positive feedback loop. And our attention by the darker forces that be has been usurped, right? By like violent news cycles, by the entertainment industry. But even though the entertainment industry bleeds truth through with movies like Inception or movies like, even Jumanji, that reality is a lot different than we imagine. Even though truth is, especially sci-fi writing and screenplays tend to bleed through a lot of truth. But honestly, it's a big distraction show, right? We're being diverted from using the power of our attention.
yeah,
And
because it's like connected with our intention. It's like if they have you worried about war or worried about politics and worried about all this stuff, then you're thinking about that instead of paying attention to all these messages that's all around us all the time.
exactly. And I call it lucid living. I wrote an article about 2 years ago on my blog about that. It was called The Magic of Lucid Living, probably. And to me, it's like, if this is a dream, because my blog is The Awakened Dreamer. And the reason I named it that was because the awakening shift that happened to me October 23rd, 2011, overnight. I literally was sleeping one night in my bed. And I had been listening to a lot of Adi Ashante CDs in my car and when I was driving and stuff, or when I was cooking meals. And he's a lovely spiritual teacher. And he was just really kind of getting under my skin. Like, I'm really liking his vibe. And to be honest, that's not my thing. Like, I mean, back then I was a yoga girl and I had a career as a clairvoyant in my 30s, and I'm a journalist by training. But I really wasn't looking for enlightenment or awakening. That's not really my orientation back then in 2011. I'm more like a new ager. And so I'm listening to this guy's stuff and I'm really liking his vibe and really grooving on what he has to say. And one night I went to sleep on October 23rd, I remember, and I was, okay, so I'm in a marriage that's really rocky at the time, and eventually it did end, but so I had a lot of emotional content around stress, my marriage. We just moved in together. I just consolidated houses and it wasn't looking good, for a lot of tension. And so I had a lot of emotional stress. So I was finding some solace in the Adi Ashante content that was really helpful about, our inner truth and our true self and enlightenment and all that. So his voice is very familiar to me from listening, and that his voice is going to be important to what happened. I went to sleep that night, and I woke up at 2 a.m. And because I heard a voice. I don't mean I dreamed it. Like, I thought it was someone was in my room, but it was his voice. And the voice said, "Lori, wake up. Walk the pathless path." was so zen. Like, what's the pathless path? Like, where do I go? Where is the pathless path? But I jolted up in bed because I heard the voice, thought someone was in the room. My husband was sleeping beside me. I knocked over my water glass, reaching for the light to turn it on to see maybe if there's someone standing in the room. And then I got up and got a towel, cleaned up the water, and went back to sleep. And I remember having this feeling as I was getting back to sleep. What does this mean? Does this mean I've had an awakening or something? I didn't feel any different. And then a spiritual awakening. And then I had a dream that I don't tell people about. So I mean, I'm getting more obvious. I'm telling more people about this now, but I didn't tell people about it because I didn't feel sure about this. But I had a dream that I was sitting on a hilltop and the meteors, fireballs were pummeling the earth. Now it could be a metaphor, but the point really in the dream, all these fireballs were hitting the earth. So just don't take it as a doomsday thing. Um, Although I dreamt 9/11 before it happened, including shaking trade towers. So I'm going to go with this dream, though. The point of the dream was I knew in the dream I had to surrender and die. I had no choice. I thought there's no point anymore. I just have to let go, like literally let go, let God. I just had to surrender. I had to die. I had to give it up. I had to be willing to die. And that dream is probably what happened to wake me up because I thought it was real. I wasn't a lucid dreamer in the dream, knowing I'm just dreaming this fireball problem. So in that choice to die and give up and surrender, I woke up the next morning at say 8 o'clock in the morning or something, and the whole world was Shane. The whole world was different. It's a little bit like the book, The Celestine Prophecy. Everything was glowing for one thing. Everything had light coming out of it, but it was just surreal. That not only was the world different to my eyes, but my inner landscape was so profoundly shifted. It was almost like I had to find myself. Where is Lori in here? It was like I was this vast, spacious, empty, alive awareness. And in there was Lori. So that awakening shift changed everything. So the point of the story, the reason to say I brought that up was something to do with, go back, help my menopause brain, because it was tying into this magical Mande1a affected reality that we're in. There was a point to that tying back. It'll come to me. Oh, oh my God, rewind the tape.
Yeah, I was trying to remember what you were saying right
Yeah,
before you
it's
started that
because
story.
we're talking about the interconnected way that other people talk about things. They tell you what you need to hear. Um, oh, I know what it was. Ha, ha, ha. It's a dream metaphor. That's right. Okay, I was going with the idea. I named my blog The Awakened Dreamer because the awakening shift made it a feel to me as if the old reality was a dream and I'd woken up to the new truth. Like I woke up from the dream to the baseline reality, what was true, a base reality, right? And I could
Right.
still see the old reality and I was still walking and talking in it, but it was like being a lucid dreamer. Like when you're at night and you're dreaming and you're in your dream, you go, wow, I'm having a really cool dream. I think I'll fly now, or which I do lucid dream. So reality became like a lucid dream to me. I was in it still. I hadn't like escaped from it, but I was aware that it was like a dream and I began to operate from that consciousness. Similarly, I wanted to say that when you begin to pay attention to the signs and synchronicities of God reaching out to you continuously, God, source, the one field, whatever you call it, then life becomes like a lucid dream. It becomes really magical because it's suddenly you don't just say, "Oh, this is happening right now," because it has no meaning. It's happening right now, and it has to have meaning because it's happening right now.
Exactly, but other people don't see it that way, which, and I have to be careful because sometimes my wife's like, that's just coincidental, I mean, I could sound crazy at times, like, you see, and every time I think, that's going to be, the perfect thing that can finally convince someone in my family, like, now do you see, it's not what it is for me to them. So to them, it's just coincidental things happening that are just of no consequence. I'm like, no, it's like a video game. In a video game, you never find one of these little Easter eggs that the creators of the game made and think it's there by accident. Everything is so on purpose. Every single little part of life is so orchestrated, it seems at times.
It
So
is. It is beyond comprehension because it's so intricately, perfectly orchestrated. And that intelligence that you already said must be benevolent, that is creating a Mande1a affected world so we can wake up gently, is doing this. Something is doing this. It's not just happening, it's being orchestrated. And that's exciting to me.
Yeah, it's definitely exciting times. So what exactly do? You say you have students. I know you have your YouTube channel, you have your blog,
I
but
teach. I teach a lot of stuff about enlightenment and awakening, and trying to like smash the two together, and like and magic and synchronicity. So the fact is that I'm literally kind of an outlier in the awakening enlightenment circles, because I talk about things like Mande1a Effect now, but even before that, I talked about, like you said, instantaneous manifestation and magic. And I think the law of attraction is a weak law, and it's a faulty system. And I don't want to go into that now, because I teach that in some of the stuff I teach online with students online classes. I just make all these online classes up, and the stuff I teach are things along the lines of, where does causality really reside? So, if we're operating in the law of attraction mindset, we're actually pretending that me here in the, say, the dream realm, let's call it that, has some magnetic ability to attract something to me in the dream realm. That's not true. If I was an Aboriginal Australian, I'd be telling you nothing happens here. It happens in the dream time. The dream time is the causal realm. And the causal realm, after effect, the after image, the outcome, the out picture is here. But you can't actually do the change at this level. So when people do a law of attraction, they get success, they've just accidentally tiptoed or side streamed into the causal realm from which they are operating. And then they come back here and go, oh, look, it worked. But they never did make it work on this level. It literally doesn't work. It would be like saying the characters on the TV screen can actually manipulate each other. You know what I mean? Like they're actually they're flat, or, they're not real. They're projected from somewhere more profound, right? Like same with watching a movie on a screen. There's a projector, so the image is sourced from somewhere else. So, reality is sourced from somewhere else, and so we're looking at the out picture of something coming from somewhere deeper within our being. So I try to teach people a little bit like how to be both enlightened and magical at the same time, because you know what, enlightenment's boring, totally boring.
well, with the Mandela effect, I think it was pretty interesting. Although I've lost the that newness of the Mandela effect. Now it's like, stuff's changing. You know what I mean? Now it's like,
Oh, you're a jaded Mande1a Effector.
well, I love it. Don't get me wrong. It's just that newness of like that WTF moment when you first realize it's happening, and you feel like you're just like, I don't know. It gets pretty wild right
Did
away.
you feel upset, or did you feel excited when you
I
discovered what?
felt like I woke up in a sci-fi movie. I didn't like, I know a lot of people had fear and stuff. There were some times when I was, when I thought CERN might be doing something in the beginning before I really started looking at the effect in a deeper way. And I just thought it could be a byproduct or, a side effect of quantum computers or CERN doing something. And, there was a little bit of, trepidation with thinking it's these suits or white coats somewhere playing around with reality, and they're jacking with the fabric of our reality and stuff. But I never was real fearful about it. I was a little bit alarmed right at first when you realize, holy crap, this is really happening. You know what I mean? And but it didn't take long before I was pushed back into the right side of my brain and realized that I was pushed more to the supernatural, and I saw those as sort of a cop out, CERN or D wave as a cop out, a left brain cop out to what's happening. It sort of allows you to stick it back in the drawer and not look any deeper at it. You're like, well, it's CERN or D wave. There's nothing I can do about it. So let's just not think about it right now. And, that leaves you on your left side of your brain. You can just sort of put it away and not worry about it. It's a dead end because, who can look into what they're up to? We don't understand. It's a mystery.
Yeah.
So, now I look at it, it's like two unknowns that people are just sticking together to solve two issues that really, I feel like they're up to something, but I don't feel like when you really look at how things are changing, they seem like very intelligent the way things are changing in a way. And I got a lot of messages about getting back to the right brain, like Rodin's thinker. He's no longer thinking with his third eye. He's like, just staring at the ground. Somebody said
Doesn't he have his knuckles in his mouth?
Now he's sucking in his knuckles. It's changed again. It's hilarious.
Next he'll be going like,
and he's got like this, I don't know, phallic shape coming out the side of his head. Have you noticed on the left? It's like we've turned into left-brained.
He keeps changing. It's really a trip, a real trip. I love when you see the people who are posing as the original thinker, and then that, like, because they were mimicking him, like the statue, and then like course, that doesn't make any sense anymore, but the original like residue of that image is still there.
Yeah,
Oh
they
my
even
God.
call it the thinker statue with weightlifters and stuff. Yeah, it's Maureen Moreau saying that it's far from boring when you start decrypting or decoding the messages. And I
Oh,
spent a lot of time doing that. I mean, hours upon hours, days upon days of seeing how
absolutely.
the T's were chopped off on one side, and how even, you know, I don't know if you know about this one, but the American Gothic painting where the farmer couples are staying there, and the
Yes.
feminine is now looking to the masculine side, and it's all following the same right brain, left brain, masculine, feminine
I
sort of.
totally heard about that, and I was totally excited when I saw that. Because again, like Maureen said, it's not about random changes. All these changes are trying to come together with meaning and make a story. And it's like, remember when we were kids? I think we're probably roughly all in the 40s or 50s, you and me. So there was a thing I used to do called connect the dots, and it would be like a picture on a paper that had no meaning, but it had number 1, 2, 5, 7, 8, 9, 10. You would connect the dots, and suddenly this randomness would become a clear image that you connect the dots. Oh, it was a horse or it was a unicorn. And I think that the depth of the where the research has to go away from the itemization of new Mandela effects. I mean, surely we could tabulate and record and itemize, especially when they flip flop. But we should be also looking at what ways can this become a narrative, like connecting the dots so that we see the picture that's trying to come at us. So like you said, it sounds like that right brain, left brain, masculine, feminine storyline is something we're meant to look at. And our
Mm-hmm.
right brain is our portal to the divine, not the left.
Right, it's a creative side of us. Yeah.
It is. That woman who had the stroke, she's quite famous. Her book is called A Stroke of Insight, and she was a brain scientist, and she had a massive stroke to she crashed her left brain completely. Oh, sorry, that's my phone. She crashed her left brain, like she had no left brain. Like, okay, it was a massive left brain stroke. Can you imagine if your left brain
Somebody write her name in the comment, because
she's stroke of insight,
yeah,
and
stroke of insight.
when her left brain shut down, and her whole book's about it, she opened up to love, compassion, interconnectedness, peace. And she actually writes in her book, she says, basically, I think that this is enlightenment. And she said, I feel like the way home is through your right brain. And she's a brain scientist. I mean, that's her thing.
Yeah, I saw like a 3-hour program with her with Oprah Winfrey, and man, I must have bawled probably 10 times watching that thing, just because she was talking about her mom had to basically go back and teach her everything again. And even with puzzles and stuff like that, she's like, her mom would tell her stuff like, no, see, you can use color, and she'd have like, oh, these aha moments that seems like it would just be real easy for us as an adult, but she had to relearn all this stuff, and she knew all the stuff about the body but didn't have the labels for it anymore from going to
Yeah,
medical school. And
I
it
know.
was an amazing story, and
It's
she felt
amazing.
one with the universe and all that.
It was an amazing book. I could not believe when I read this. I was so excited because, the awakening thing that happened to me didn't happen with brain damage, thank God. But, it felt like I was brain damaged because there's a lot of ways that you operate in the world that your left brain is habitually doing, that when it goes offline a bit with whatever awakening really is, it feels like it's a neurological repatterning, that you can feel like you're a little bit brain damaged, like memory.
Jill Bolte Taylor, somebody just
Yes,
said. Yeah.
thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
So may we all have that experience without damage to
Without
our
the stroke. Yeah, definitely. Because it's an important lesson for all of us to learn. So what's the best way for people to get a hold of you? I mean, I've got your
yeah.
YouTube channel linked, but
Certainly that. And then the blog is theawakenedreamer.com. This www.theawakenedreamer.com. And then all of those places have ways to reach me, like, contact references. Yeah. Probably the
okay.
best way. I'm also on Facebook. I'm a bit of a Facebook early adopter. So if anyone wants to add me as a friend, or if I don't have any room left, which I often don't, just you can message me there or follow me there, or whatever. I do most of my stuff on Facebook, and I'm really late to YouTube. So I'm just doing YouTube because it's where I can be more weird and woo-woo without worrying about my old crew of enlightenment people thinking I've lost my mind.
Awesome. I just added your link to the Awakened
Awakenedreamer.com.
Dreamer.
www.theawakeneddreamer.com. Dispatches from beyond the dream. Only
Yeah.
because I'm a reporter by trade. I was a journalism student and reporter and magazine editor, writer. And I only want to report about in the awakening stuff, now the Mande1a Effect. I don't want to be a purveyor of teaching wisdom. If everyone ever thinks I'm a spiritual teacher, I want them to shoot me on the head. Like, the worst thing you can do is put yourself on the teacher pedestal as a spiritual teacher, because you're never going to be able to stay on it.
Yeah, people call me a teacher all the time. I'm like, dude, I'm a student and I'm just sharing what I'm learning as I'm going along here.
Yeah,
you know
exactly.
what I mean? I'll never be the teacher.
I have a teenage daughter who's 18, and if I ever got in my high horse, she'd put me right down. She'd get on the public airwaves and tell them I'm a shrieky, naggy mom.
Well, it's been awesome to have you on.
It was so much fun. Thank you.
I definitely want to have you back again, too. I mean, I'd like to have you as a regular.
Thanks, Shane. It was so much fun to connect with you. And as I said, I love your show. Actually, I do watch all of your interviews. And again, thank you for the Nathan Saunders series that you've put out there. I think you've done a great service to the world by being willing to put that material out.
Oh, that would have seemed so far out in left field just even a couple of years ago to me. And then I've actually had some really interesting results. I've had different responses to some of the same questions he's had. And I was even like, why am I getting a different question from what Nathan got, or, a different answer to the question than Nathan got? And I got that Journey song, Don't Stop Believing, but it was the new version of it.
Oh,
it was like New Revelations or something is the name of the album, and it's like, what the heck? This is weird. You know what I mean?
That is so perfect. Yes, you got your own version of reality, because it's all your world. There's one thing you said about Sam and Nathan. What was it I was going to say? Don't stop believing. Oh, when you added me to the Facebook page, I thought, oh my God, what's he adding me to this like weird page for? Or the group. You added me, and I'm like, this is just so far out there. And that was my first reaction, honestly. I had to go back and watch the show where you interviewed Nathan for me to actually go back to the group and get involved with the group. So at first I thought, even for me, which is crazy because I'm pretty far out now, I thought, oh, this is strange. Some guy named Sam and he's communicating with through music.
Right. But then you realize that's, you don't call it Sam, but you were doing the same sort of thing all along, right?
Yeah. And I think Sam's a lovely way to connect to the divine, because it's an easy moniker, because it's Sam, masculine, feminine. Works for me, actually.
I know it's a lot of people have a hard time because he's kind of gotten into the religion thing a little bit, but I just had to bring this up because since the last show, someone pointed out the fact that Messiah is an anagram for he is Sam perfectly. I know I want to get some crap for that one, but it was so cool I had to share it because I'm like, holy crap, it's been there the whole time. He is Sam.
Oh, Sam I am.
Right, Sam I am. So
I believe it. You know what? Why couldn't God be called Sam? Let's not give God, let's not put God, on a pedestal where God has to have a name like Adonis or Adonai, or, it could just be as simple as Sam.
Yeah. And the thing is, it's
not a he and it's not a she. Sorry, all those he people out there.
Right. Yeah. We've been raised in such a way that it's just sort of natural. I wanted to do a quick announcement before we go. Mark your calendar for May 27th. I'm going to be on Twin Flame Divine Fire radio. It's on Truth Frequency Radio with Alan and Sandra from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. Pacific time. And I do have the link and information below. And I will bring it up again before that date. But definitely want to have you back again, Lori. You've been awesome.
Thanks, Shane.
It's not way out there for me now. It's like, maybe a few years ago it would have been, but it's totally cool to watch your channel and your stuff. I'm like, oh, wow, she gets it. You know what I mean? And you've been getting it for a while, and now you're not so alone. So we're all waking up.
Thank you so much for validating me and making me not feel so weird. And my next one that I'm going to do whenever I get around to it is going to be about what I call less luminous beings. But I promise people who watch my channel, I never fearmonger. It's not my thing. Anything I say comes with a big dose of, ready-made love.
That's awesome. Well, thanks so much for being here. I want to love everybody, send out love to everybody in the chat, and thanks for being here. And we'll see you guys in the next one. Have a good one.
Ciao, ciao. See you guys.
Peace.
Peace, peace, peace.
you.